Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha Kapadi. I'm Director of Global Advisory at ODI Global. It is my pleasure to welcome you to a Q&A that we are initiating for the ODI Fellowship Scheme. For the past 2.5 years, I have had the immense honor of overseeing the ODI Fellowship Scheme, and this is the most exciting time of the year when we open up applications and get to meet all of you, our new candidates for the scheme. Just to give you all a bit of background, last year we had a record number of applications, 1,400 applications for this program, for 35 or so fellowship spots. So it is a very competitive program, a very compelling program, and we are thrilled to have a number of alums here with us to answer all of your burning questions. So to let you know how this next hour will go, we're not really going to give you a basic overview of the program. There is a video embedded on our website where you can learn all about the general scope of the program and what we seek to do. What we hope this webinar will be is an opportunity for you to ask questions. There's no dumb question, whether it's about logistics or personal issues that you may encounter, what the work is like, really any question will go. So please use the chat, the Q&A, to send those questions over to us, and we will have our esteemed alums and the fellowship team here to answer those questions. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Darren Lomas, to introduce himself before I get to our alums.
Hi, I'm Darren. I'm a program manager on the fellowship scheme. I work across a broad range of things, really, but at the moment focusing on recruitment, placement, monitoring, evaluation of all the different placements that we have. I'll pass you over to...
Well, coming back to me.
Oh, okay. Back to Sasha.
All right, so I'm going to introduce our alums very briefly and let you know where they were placed as ODI Fellows, and they will tell you a bit about their post-fellowship journeys. So first we have Jennifer Lundquist, who was at the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare in Liberia from 2013 to 2015. Then we have Vineet Murthy, who is at the National Statistical Office in Malawi from 2016 to 2018. And finally, we have Sakshi Halan, who was in the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda, recently graduated from 2022 to 2024. Jennifer, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I guess, just briefly, I was in the health financing unit in the ministry. So that involved, because my background was health economics, so I did in the interview ask to ideally be placed in a health position. So it would look at everything from national health insurance to fiscal space analysis to mapping resources that were coming into the health sector from government and aid agencies. So yeah, it was various things. And then afterwards, I did freelance still in health financing for a few organizations like Apt Associates, but mainly I did an impact evaluation with the World Bank, leading that for 5 years. And that also tied into my doctorate in public health that I'm just about to finish. So that's the short version of it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Vinny, over to you.
Thanks, Sasha. It's great to be here on the call. I currently work as a manager at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. I'm based out of the Delhi office, working with different states in India. My journey after the ODI Fellowship has been pretty incredible and has been a dream come true as I had joined the ODI Fellowship. So I worked for a couple of years with the World Bank as a consultant working on macroeconomics in Central America, following which I joined TBI, where I've been mostly advising ministries of technology in building up their tech policies and strategy. So it's been a great journey and wishing you all the best of luck for your application.
Thanks so much, Vinny. Sakshi, over to you.
Thank you, Sasha. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So I'm currently based in the Ministry of Education and Sports. I'm actually in my final month of the fellowship. I started a bit later than my other cohort mates. So that's why you might sense like the odd timing of, in the timelines. So I'm essentially in the education planning department. I'm the first fellow in the Ministry of Education. So that's been quite a journey for me. And as part of the education planning department, as an economist, I've been supporting program design, supporting implementation of education programs, a bit of monitoring and evaluation, and a lot of stakeholder management, and designing strategies and plans related to the education, and overall like human capital sector, working with other line ministries as well. Um, and I was very happy to be placed in education because I wanted to kind of venture into education and health. Um, and luckily, going forward, my next job is in the education space in Africa. I will be joining JPAL in their policy team. And so I'm very happy that I'll get to continue living here and working here, and work in, sort of a mix of research and policy roles, combining like my last two work experiences. But very happy to be here, answer any and all questions that prospective candidates have. Back to you, Sasha. Thank you.
Thanks, Sakshi, and forgive me for sort of messing up the end dates of your fellowship. Sakshi started her briefing week my first day at ODI. So we're
Yes.
sort of celebrating a milestone together in so many ways. So the floor is yours, everyone. Please feel free to type in any questions that you have for us, the administrators of the scheme, or for our alums. I will give you all a few minutes, oh, not even a few minutes, a few seconds to get those questions in. But in the meantime, I will start off. So Jennifer, Vineet, Sakshi, what was the most surprising thing you learned about yourself during the fellowship?
Who should go first? Or should I go?
Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Probably how resilient I am. And because obviously can be a bit daunting. I mean, in my case, like I said, and also thank you for having me, and I wish you all best of luck for your applications as well. Yeah, so even though my only ask was really to ideally get a position in the health sector, but obviously I didn't choose the country. I had no requirements in that sense, and so it was all very new, and my position was also new in the Ministry of Health, so it's very much figuring things out on the go. So I'd say, yeah, being creative, proactive, and agile is helpful if you're applying to the scheme.
And I think your experience and Sakshi's experience is unique, right? You didn't have any fellow predecessors. So it was really about building something from scratch. Sakshi, do you want to answer? I don't know if your response might be something similar.
Yeah, I think one of the things was like, yeah, knowing how well I can adapt to a new environment, but then also I think being like knowing how well I can adapt to just like like my actual role ended up being very different from like what I thought I would do, or like what the TOR said, which will be the case which is the case for most fellows. I think you both will also agree, Vineet and Jennifer. And just figuring out in a few months like how you just have to be on your toes sometimes and like just go with the flow. I thought that I wouldn't be like that because I was used to more structure in my previous roles. But just knowing that, okay, no, I can adapt easily to, like changing circumstances and things being up and about at any point. And yeah, like no, figuring that out about myself was quite a surprise. But I'm very happy for everything that came my way that made me this person. Yeah.
Vineet, over to you.
I was a first ODI fellow in the stats office as well. So, I of course echo both the sentiments of Jennifer and Sakshi. And one thing I really did learn about myself was just my penchant for and love for learning new things. I had never worked. My job as an ODI fellow was to help developed the census for Malawi. It was the first digital census project that they were working on. And I didn't have any experience remotely for that particular experience. So it was all learning on the go. And that's something I have really hung on to in my subsequent jobs as well, where I have, been given the responsibility of going to ministry and trying to figure it out. And it's really that love for learning I really did build out during my ODI fellowship and was able to carry on.
I think a related question that's come through on the Q&A is, and perhaps you can be very specific, maybe there's a moment that that helped you realize these traits or these qualities that you had in yourself. So what was the biggest personal or professional challenge that you encountered during the program, and how did you overcome it? And this is a question from Felicia. Who wants to go first? Jennifer, go ahead.
I can start. Oh, so go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry. Oh, I can. Okay, cool. So I think one of the biggest professional challenges was being the first fellow, because making my colleagues kind of get around the concept of the fellowship and the fact that I'm suddenly here and I'm part of the team for 2 years. And I hadn't lived in Uganda, so I was new to Uganda. I was fairly new to the education sector as well. So kind of establishing that trust with not just my immediate colleagues, but also like other departments and other ministries, because as being in the central department, like the planning department, there was a lot of engagement with donors, with other education like agencies, with Ministry of Finance regularly. So kind of establishing that trust with them. So, to lead to a point where in a few months, like they trusted me to represent the ministry in meetings, to give presentations, not just to answer questions on behalf of the ministry, like to introduce myself as I'm an economist in the Ministry of Education. And, to that accomplishment felt like it happened, I think 6 months down the line for me, where I went to like a big meeting and there were all these non-for-profits and donors. And I stood up and I was surprised at how well I kind of had understood the ministry by then. Obviously, not 100%. There's never 100%, but just being able to do that was it was a great like validation for me to be able to represent the ministry in places and to have my colleagues trust me and know me as more than just an ODI fellow, as actually like an employee even though it's for that short period. But yeah.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I would say, but yeah, being the first ODI fellow, also my setup was a bit unusual in that Ministry of Health didn't pay me themselves. They actually sourced my Ministry of Health salary from donors. And being the first, people were less familiar with the fellowship. And so the biggest challenge was really to clarify that I worked for them and I didn't work for anyone else. This might happen. I had sometimes, with the best of intentions, you'd get people from ODI would try and contact me about information, or donors who were involved would go straight to me rather than my Liberian colleagues. So it was really trying to navigate that and really emphasize that, no, I'm a Ministry of Health employee and you should talk to my boss, or trying to set that record straight, that you're not sort of an outside partner that's coming in to dictate how things should be, but really you're embedded in the unit and you're working as part of a team. So it's important to elevate those other voices too. So that was definitely a bit of a tricky situation.
My big personal challenge, so 1 month into the fellowship, I was in a small town called Zomba, working with the staff office there. And the building itself was crumbling. The government had not invested as much to the infrastructure. And it was a huge culture shock at the beginning. And 1 month to the fellowship, I took a trip back home because I was like, I don't know if I can actually make it. Took a couple of weeks off and then came back and completed the 2 year of the fellowship. So it can be a very lonely experience, especially the initial culture shock, understanding the context as it was for me in Zomba. And over the 2 years, of course, as Sakshi said, it's really about building strong relationships with the government colleagues. And one of the professional challenges that not only me, but also my Malawian colleagues felt was some of the management in the office. We were all struggling under, you know, underfunded projects and not great planning to complete the census project. It was a lot of, it was a stressful situation as the responsibility on me and my colleagues was to do an 18 million census project, counting people across the whole country. So it was a challenge, not only for me, but also my colleagues on getting through the whole census project, especially over a 3 week period where the pressure of work is very high. The investment is has gone in, and it's important to go to the finish line. So that was the project. That was the challenge that I felt, and so did my Malawian colleagues.
Well, Vineet, on that subject, and perhaps you answered this already, so I'll go to Jennifer and Sakshi, but what were your experiences in trying to face or overcome language or cultural barriers? How did you manage to get through those tough spots where you felt very alone, very isolated, and a bit unfamiliar with what was going on around you?
Yeah, so the first initially, being an outsider coming into the government, no one is welcoming you. You have, I was given I was given a room to work in, but my colleagues still didn't trust me. And it really required a lot of persistence, but also connecting with a couple of colleagues who really did guide me on navigating the government bureaucracy. Secondly, what also really helped me is I was very keen on learning Chichewa, and that really helped build a lot of trust with my colleagues. And the third one is really to showcase that I wasn't a threat to take anyone else's job, but I would work behind the scenes so that the spotlight is on my colleagues. That attitude really helped throughout. And that is when people started building trust with me. The amount of responsibilities I had increased from doing data entry in the first month to really being a trusted advisor on how to help develop a survey or how to build a software on data cleaning and so on. So that was really that whole process, which is a challenging one, but also something I truly enjoyed.
Jennifer?
Okay. Yeah, so it wasn't too bad for me because then Liberia, they speak English mostly, at least definitely in Monrovia. And so, and also my colleagues picked me up from the airport. So we had a good rapport from the beginning. I'd say maybe the one thing that was different is that being Swedish, and I had this in the UK too, I can be a bit direct sometimes and straight to business. And in Liberia, it's helpful if you spend time chit-chatting and getting to know people and joke around before you get to business. So that was definitely something I had to sort of check myself and get comfortable with, that just the way to proceed in meetings and things like that was a bit different than what I was used to. But yeah, so it's just, like I said before, it's helpful to just be open-minded and observant, and just spend time building that rapport with your colleagues and people that you work with. It makes all the difference.
Thanks. Sakshi?
Yeah, just jumping off from what Jennifer said, I think like obviously the working language was English, but then my colleagues would like crack jokes in Luganda. That's the language spoken in Kampala and central Uganda. And I started learning like a little bit of it, and then I would just ask like a lot of questions and like jokingly make like Luganda to English translation notes in my phone, and like try to learn like the slang and not just like the professional stuff. But it was a lot about also sharing cultures, because my colleagues have always been very curious about where I come from, where I've been, where I've lived, like the jobs I've done, whatever. My, sometimes even my personal life. I feel like sometimes they know a bit too much, but I am generally like a friendly person, so I kind of gave in, and I have luckily like I share my office with my like a desk colleague, and she has become my best friend here. Like, and there's just, I think my approach was be open, listen, and ask, and instead of be curious, not judgmental. That's like the motto I went with. Um, and yeah, like now we've reached a point where we share lunches. They like ask me for like recipes of things I make. I got like 3 birthday cakes last year, all from my different colleagues. Just and like everyone is like genuinely, I know they're genuinely sad to see me go, because I've been like, they've enjoyed my presence in the office in addition to my work. So yeah, just being a little bit more vulnerable and friendly, and like, yeah, not trying to put a wall. And that helped a lot. Like sharing, and like also just listening and asking questions. Yeah.
Sakshi, I'm going to follow up with a question from William. So, you've gotten to this point where you're getting 3 birthday cakes from colleagues, and your desk mate is a dear friend at this point. How did you get here? So how would you say how did the overall timeline go from sort of finding your feet and trying to learn the ropes to getting to a point where you felt like you were trusted, to go back to what Vineet was talking about, to now being so well integrated that people are
Yeah.
genuinely really sad that you're leaving? So how would you kind of chart that out?
Yeah, like I have been reminiscing about like my time here now that it's coming to an end. And I was, just like thinking about my first few months. And I think like one of the first things I told myself is say yes to everything. Like I'm not a big fan of like like Ugandan food, but I said yes to like all lunches in the beginning. I like made jokes. I realized like some of my colleagues who like jokes, some of them who don't. So I've kind of figured out what the other person likes and doesn't like, and people's personalities a little bit. And I think finding like the one or two people who you, to say it in loose terms, vibe with, um, and sharing your life with the other person, like, or like just, like, um in the beginning I wasn't sure like how much to share or like whether to joke or not, but like taking that time, and at first just kind of listening, rather than speaking, like be it in meetings or be it in like informal discussions. Um and yeah, I think like even making a relationship with your colleagues where you actually are curious about their interests or what they do, like family, life, or like their like interests outside of work. That's something that I think sparked off that relationship, because my colleagues always saw me like carrying like my gym clothes in the office, or sometimes carrying a yoga mat, and like or like carrying my lunch to the office. Like these little interactions, which are like water cooler interactions, really helped in kind of building that relationship. Um, but yeah, in the beginning, it was just saying yes to everything, be it a lunch or be it a meeting or be it even if it's a meeting that's not wasn't directly related to my work, I would still be like, yeah, I'll go with you. Like, yeah, sure. Or like if they ask me to like help with something, help them with something on their computer, I'd do it. Like I wouldn't, like I would just say yes to everything. And that kind of made them feel like, oh yeah, like she can be relied on and she can be trusted. Um, yeah, I think that's sort of how it happened.
Thanks, Sakshi. Vineet, Jennifer, anything you wanted to add about that trajectory? How long did it take? I mean, Vineet, you talked about having to hit pause right at the beginning and coming back and then being in a better mindset to be able to put in the time and the work, frankly, right? To be successful in your fellowship. So any comments about how long it takes?
Yeah, so I would say by the end of the first year, the relationship is solidly built. I had learned all the skills, technical skills that I needed to learn. And from 12, from 1 to the year and a half, my contribution and productivity was the highest to the government, after which it was time to wind down. So that was really the timeline.
Yeah, I'll just echo a lot what actually was saying that yeah, just I'm also very curious as a person, and I love learning about new places and cultures, people, and so I just sort of threw myself headfirst into figuring things, like embracing using like wearing lapa if they were. I went on the Women's Day march, went to football games. I volunteered to go county planning, even though I didn't have to, just because I wanted to see the rest of the country. And I think all these kind of things just made they really appreciated that I was sort of showing that interest in their culture, and I was becoming more like one of them, one of their colleagues. There was like empathy there, and I could understand certain things. So yeah, just it definitely helps, loving and appreciating where you're going and just being curious about it. And I don't know if it's hard to put a timeline of it. Obviously, like the first year in any job is very helpful to figuring things out. I'd say we had the Ebola epidemic in the second year or towards the end of my first year. And those kind of things also brings you together because you're obviously going through like a really intense time. And just, they saw how hard I was working and everything. So yeah, definitely a year sounds about right, or the first, few months, but it's hard to put a sort of specific timeline on it.
Sure, sure. Well, you may have noticed we gained a panelist. So Georgina Conway has joined us, another alum of the program who was in the Ministry of Finance in Timor-Leste from 2019 to 2021. Georgina, can you just give us a few words about where you are now and what's happened in the years since your fellowship?
Hi, yeah. I had a really great fellowship despite being during COVID and having to be repatriated back to the UK for about 6 of those months. But I think it was a posting where I improved my technical skills because I was the lead macroeconomist, but also just really, like the other panelists have said, kind of completely immersed myself in the new culture with my colleagues. And so much so that I ended up staying on, and I only left Timor last year. So I did end up staying for nearly 5 years. So I stayed for 4.5 years. So right now I'm in Palau, which is another small island in the Pacific. So I'm here as an ADB TA, supporting the Ministry of Finance here as an economic advisor to the minister.
Great, thank you, Georgina. So there are a couple of questions that are referring to skills that you wish you had before your fellowship. Georgina, why don't we start with you? Any skills that you wish you had developed, maybe technical skills, interpersonal skills that you wish you had maybe been a bit stronger in before you got to your role?
I think that's a hard one because I think either way, I wasn't a macroeconomist or hadn't had a macroeconomics role before I'd gone there. I had been an economist in the UK Treasury, so I'd worked on fiscal policy and then international policy. So I hadn't been working on, purely Excel data, spreadsheets and forecasting. So I think you can do a little bit of prep beforehand. I did read up about kind of national accounts and that sort of thing, but I just think the best thing is just throwing yourself in it and just learning as much as you can in the early stages. So learning as much as I could, and meeting all the stakeholders as well. I think probably that's been mentioned already, but not just the technical skills, but just the stakeholders, not just within the Ministry of Finance, but all the stakeholders that I was going to be working with in, the trade promotion agency, in the Prime Minister's office, in the President's office, as the leads for health and planning for education. So I think that's really, you have to just hit the ground running and understand the subtleties and of culture, but also I think just understanding the political economy and how decisions are made there. So I think a big thing is that decisions might not be made on a technical basis, but you have to kind of lean into that and understand how you can contribute and have an impact, given that, you know, probably quite political context. So yeah, I think maybe just these things that you end up picking up, but yeah, I think leaning into the kind of the politics of the situation is something that I hadn't appreciated as much before I'd got there.
Sasha, I see you nodding your head. Do you have something to add to Georgina's comment?
Yeah, I think I relate to that. Like there were skills, obviously, like in the first few months when in a few places I was like, oh, I feel like a headless chicken here. You know, I don't know. I wish like I knew this or I'd done this kind of work before. For example, like for me, it was knowing about the budgeting, like national budgeting process and how it works between like Ministry of Finance and the line ministries, and then how it works between like the national ministry and then your local governments, because Uganda has a very complicated structure that way. And I wish that I had a little more experience in that. But I also felt that I had the time to kind of spend, um, ask questions and like read up. And so I eventually got there, but I wish I had a little bit more of experience there because even though I wasn't in Ministry of Finance, I had a lot of engagement with them. Um, but then, yeah, like a lot of skills you just kind of learn on the job, like in any other job. And it eventually ended up working out. Yeah.
Vinny, Jennifer, anything to add?
And I'd yeah, echo all of those things. It's a political environment you go into. So yeah, I definitely hadn't worked. I'd interacted with British or government officials in the UK before, but obviously, like it's helpful to understand how the system works and all the stakeholders involved, and that it can be a very reactive environment. It's not, you know, you can know in theory how something could be solved, but doesn't mean it'll happen in practice. So you need the political capital for those things. And so yeah, I echo everything that's been said. But it's kind of hard to prepare. You definitely learn on the job. You just have to be like I said, proactive is a really key thing, like researching, looking things up, and asking questions for anything that's new. And yeah, then you figure a lot of things out.
Yeah, just to add there's no prep required before the fellowship. It's really how you approach it the first few months and really learn it on the go in the first few months. You know, before I went to Malawi, I didn't know which government ministry or which country I would go to, so it would have been impossible to prepare either way. And the first few months is really understanding the context, understanding the history and stakeholders initially.
Great, thanks, Vinny. I guess let's go back in time. I'm gonna ask you a question here that Menon has asked about applying to the scheme. What prompted you to apply for the scheme, and how did you prepare for the application? The application has changed since a bit. Since your days, even Sakshi's days, it's changed under my tenure. But how did you go about it? Who wants to go first?
I can start off. Yeah, so before I joined the fellowship, I spent a little bit of time at the World Bank. I did my master's in the US. And as I was talking to people, I met quite a few former ODI fellows. And, you know, to understand what I wanted to do, I realized that the ODI fellowship would be the best way. My dream at that time was quite clear, was to really, work with different governments, move to either Asia or Africa after completing my graduate studies. So talking to ODI alumni really helped. I reached out to people in cold emails and just got an understanding of the fellowship and the future career prospects of it. Secondly, the application process itself was quite straightforward and really preparing for the interview, understanding both the economics as well as the statistics, basics, and really getting up on some of the problem solving experiences that I had.
Who else wants to jump in? Saksha, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a similar background as Vineet. I also did my master's in development economics in the US, and then I was at the World Bank for a few years before coming on to the fellowship. And I was primarily doing research at the bank, impact evaluation, a lot of policy research work, a bit of academic research. And I wanted to, like, my motivation to even study economics was to kind of understand economics in the real world. It was to understand how economics and policy and politics interact. And I'd vaguely heard about ODI Fellowship from like during my undergrad years, actually. So it had always been on my mind that this is such a unique format, and it gives you such a unique position, drops you in the middle of like a ministry in the world, and for 2 years you're essentially a civil servant. And the whole concept of it was very fascinating to me. And I wanted to kind of make that move from a pure research role to working with policymakers, like Vineet said. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to see economics play out in the real world. And that was my motivation. And even during the application, like right now the process is different, but the standard things of knowing why you are interested and why you want to apply, because even in our process we had like 3-4 questions, sort of like paragraphs, and it made me like introspect and think about why, like in the my years at the World Bank, what has kept me kind of motivated to move on to to outside of World Bank and to a role like this, and what do I want to do after this. So kind of asking myself those questions helped me in preparing the answers as well, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to understand economics in the real world, in a government setting, and how ministries function, how do they make these decisions that we see in headlines. And that was like for me, that was clear that that's why I wanted to do the fellowship. And I knew that obviously, like even after talking to a few fellows, you realize that everyone has different experiences. There are common threads, but everyone has very unique experiences. And once or twice you do meet fellows who don't probably have like a really good experience, because you do go in like kind of prepared for the unexpected, or like preparing for, you don't know what you can't anticipate 100% what you're going to get. And so it's a little bit about that. Like, are you ready to kind of take that challenge and take that risk, not knowing fully what your job is going to be? And I was also kind of ready for that. So I think that helped me through the process as well. And even in the interviews, I think. Yeah.
Right, Sakshi. Georgina, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much the application process has changed, but I think the two main things that stood out for me during it was basically brushing up on your economics 101, just the core about macro, micro, trade, etc. But not just, and getting back, making sure that you can explain it in layman terms, because of when you are posted, wherever you are posted, you're going to be interacting with people with various varying different backgrounds of technical expertise. So you could be talking to some people in your office that have very operational jobs. You could be talking to a director general that might have a better overview of what's going on. You might be talking to the minister that has a big picture. So I think being able to tailor your language to different audiences, and also get complex technical and economic ideas across in the simplest way, that through analogies or examples, etc. And then kind of just try and speak clearly, and rather than in a lot of jargon. And then the second thing that I was going to say is, from when I did my kind of, I think, assessment center back in the day, we were kind of put in these kind of team assessments where we all had to work together on a common task. So there's like, they throw a lot of different scenarios at you, and there's basically no right or wrong answer for them. But what they're trying to look for is someone that can work in a team, someone that is kind of culturally sensitive, empathetic, a good listener, doesn't dominate. And I think those are the kind of key skills that you will take through your fellowship as well. The ability to distill complex ideas and get them across to people with different backgrounds, and to be culturally sensitive, and to be able to work through other people and bring people together. So you can't just be like a one person show, because you're not gonna build capacity, and you're not gonna get people on board. So I think those are the two things that I would say about the application process from my experience.
Yeah, yeah, I was waiting to speak last because mine was a long time ago. It was 2013, so it's really hard to remember. But I do remember there was a panel, and definitely there was economics related questions. Personally, I'd heard as well about the fellowship. As an undergrad, I did economics and international relations, so that was always an interest of mine. But I spent 2 years working for EY, the accounting and advisory company in the UK. So I learned a lot of practical skills through those 2 years. So the interview, remember, there was, scenarios. How would you deal with this kind of scenario, and showing that you understood sort of economic thinking and concepts, but also how would you operate in an unexpected situation. And I had, from my consultancy days, I think used a lot of examples from that. So that's all I can say, unfortunately, because it's hard to remember.
Yeah, I will add that, look, there are lots of tools out there now that make completing an application to the ODI Fellowship Scheme a whole lot easier than it used to be, even for Sakshi, right? This is a very human program. We want to see your humanity in your application, right? Last year, as I said at the beginning, there were 1,400 applications for this program. A person reads every single one. If you don't put your heart into it, if you, as Sakshi said, if you don't understand why this program is right for you in this time, don't apply. It won't come across in your materials, and we see it, right? We have to be pretty ruthless when we get down from 1,400 to the 70 that we end up interviewing, right? Last year, we even did an AI scan for applications to try and determine whether or not applications were AI driven, so to speak, right? And people with an authentic voice, it comes out so clearly. So please know, Darren, myself, we read your applications. And if you half-ass it, it's not gonna get read fully, right? So be yourself, and we've added questions in that short answer part that help us get to know you, right? This is not about how smart you are. It's about whether or not you can do the 2 years, and whether or not you can contribute to not only the institution that is hosting you, but to the community at large. There are 1,300 fellows who have done this program over the past 60 plus years. They're a very special group, as you can see by the 4 that we have with us on this webinar. It takes conviction. Obviously, you have to be bright, but it's really that conviction. It's really understanding how this program will help you over the long term, and why it's right for you. I will say that. A question that has come through, which is an interesting one, so I'm gonna pose it to the panel. This person praised the diversity of the panel, and last year we actually recruited our most diverse cohort ever. Pretty incredible. I think we had over 100 nationalities apply to the program itself. So this is truly a global program. We prize ourselves on our diversity, and that it's open to everyone. And so Development economics, however, has been historically associated with white saviorism. So how do you make sure that you're genuinely listening to the communities that you're working with rather than imposing certain ways of thinking or certain ways of doing? Who wants to go first on that? Georgina, go ahead. Vinny, go ahead.
You've got a plane to catch.
Well, I'll just sort of say this, the stakeholder and the whole ecosystem, it is pretty much dominated by Europeans, no longer USAID now. So it is evolving. But at that time, the privilege of being an ODI fellow was really being able to talk to the donor community, which might be European led or working with the government and ensuring that, at least being an Indian in Malawi was, got to see both sides from how the donor community works as well as how the reality of the government is, and really being in there for 2 years, having the shared experience really helped me to build a lot of empathy in terms of the capacity that the government of Malawi had at that time. So for me, it was at least the ODI fellowship. There's a very few fellowships for Indians to really apply for to get an opportunity to work in. And that way, it really helped me not only launch my career in the field of development, but did help me be in a very unique position to work across the ecosystem. So I'm a huge advocate for more Indians, more Africans applying for the ODI fellowship.
Anyone else?
I was just going to say that the amazing thing about being an ODI fellow is that you are not given a specific mandate. I mean, you have a loose TOR that was drawn up by the ministry that you're going to be working in, but ODI are not prescriptive about what you should be working on, what mandate, what frameworks you should be using, anything. And really, you are free resource for the government to use. So you'll find, like, if you're working for a donor or something, they'll have their own objectives that they want to achieve. You're there purely for the benefit of the government and the ministry that you're working for. So I think that's what's really an amazing opportunity, and something that you really don't get to see that often. And I think that also kind of addresses the question that we're saying about how can you avoid this kind of prescriptive development that has very standardized approach. And yeah, having a very diverse cohort also is something that helps with that as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think I touched on this earlier, that just remember who you work for, and like I said, Liberia's health sector is so reliant on outside support because they get more from outside partners than government. So they have a huge amount of influence, and I over and over had to sort of re-emphasize, no, I work for you, and eventually that became clear, and we became very tight as a team. And I would refer to my boss or things like that. So you really remember who you're working for, and feed into that structure. And it is such a unique vantage point because you're understanding from your colleagues, listening to them and their experiences, what's going on from their perspective, and you can sort of help translate that if the situation asks for it. But yeah, just being part of a good team.
Yeah, just to actually round up whatever I relate to everything that all the three of you said. But yeah, reflecting on what your assumptions are when you come in, and knowing, reflecting on what your approach is. Because even I was also looked as an outsider, or when they heard that, oh, I worked at the World Bank before, they or you know um like my colleagues also thought that, a few of them thought that that's the approach I would have, like a white savior approach. So kind of internally reflecting on how you are in your day-to-day work and like your interactions with your colleagues. Like, are you only looking out for faults or like, the things that are not working? Or are you looking for things, appreciating things that are working? And then like also just kind of figuring out how to work with the limited resources that you have. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what economics is all about, like how to use scarce resources. So are you actually doing that? And then, yeah, like Vineet said, like being an Indian, grew up in India for like most of my adult life, and kind of I have seen the other side of things. So that way I was able to relate to my colleagues because India has been, a recipient country, and I've seen like the other side of things. So kind of bonding with them on that for me personally helped a little because I think I could relate to growing up in a developing country. I could relate to the experiences of my colleagues growing up in, yeah, like colleagues have grown up here, and like just noticing the little things about how their interactions worked with the donors. And sometimes I have ended up playing the role of the bridge between the donor colleagues and my colleagues here, because sometimes like you can see where things are working and where things aren't working, and a lot of times it's about the people who are on both sides of the table, and how they work with the structures that they're put in. And so I think I had the opportunity to kind of be the bridge and, make the World Bank colleagues understand how to engage better, or like help my ministry colleagues understand where we can kind of leverage our position, because the power imbalances are very clear. You can see it. Um, so yeah, it's the little things and like the big things and your approach to it and how you act. Um, in a situation and in an engagement and just generally in your daily work. That helped a lot. Yeah.
Beautifully said, Sakshi. Go ahead, Jennifer. Yeah,
I
come
just
back
want to
in.
give an example. So my boss's boss, the deputy minister of planning, I remember at one point didn't agree with something that the partners were proposing, and I did say to her privately, like, you can disagree, you can push back, like you don't have to go with, because there is that sort of power imbalance. They obviously rely on a lot of the resources, so it's just being, sort of behind the scenes, also supporting your colleagues and like standing up for their ideas and their input and expertise.
A little bit of a left field question. I think we're just going to take maybe two, three more. Did any of you have experience bringing partners to your fellowship country? And if so, how did that work out? Or no experience at all? All right. Sorry to that person who asked that question. You won't get that insight.
I
You're
did
all
meet my
alone.
fiance there. I did meet my fiance. Yeah.
So, if you're single, you could meet the love of your life in your fellowship country. We know that it happens. We
We've
know
seen lots of
fellows,
examples. Yeah.
fellows who marry each other. We've also seen that. And we do also have fellows who travel with their partners and increasingly their families. It's quite normal. The fellowship team here can help you to a certain extent, but it happens. We can, if we get there, we'll cross that bridge. So last question, I think, for the panel, and then I'll take there's obviously a big one that's quite topical, but Jennifer, Georgina, Sakshi, how do you feel your fellowship contributed to your personal and professional growth?
It's a very loaded question.
It is very low.
But yeah, I'm happy to go first. It is part of my
Okay.
reflections that are happening right now. Um, Personally, I think it has made me more confident. I think I was in a bit of a professional shell before this. Even though I was at the World Bank, you still feel like such a small person in like an institution as big as the World Bank. I think coming here, I got to take on lead on a lot of things. I got to, represent the ministry in a lot of things. So personally built a lot of confidence in me. I was able to, engage with different kinds of people with different opinions, different like cultural backgrounds. And being able to do that, like develop that skill of engaging with colleagues, um, of even like different technical levels, because I came from a technical background. So kind of feeling a bit more confident about like the policy side of things. Um, and yeah, learning about like how to completely start from scratch, be more proactive, be creative, be like my problem solving skills definitely have enhanced. Um, and yeah, a lot of patience, because at times you do get frustrated with the big things and the small things. But at the end of the day, you realize you are in a government. Like governments, even in developed countries, have inefficiencies, have corruption, and everything else. It's just disguised in a different way. So I think knowing that this is bureaucracy and this is how it works, and where you can intervene and where you don't, and where you work around it, I think knowing those things, the soft skills, really helped. Um, and yeah, like I feel very fulfilled at the end of 2 years. Professionally, personally, I've grown a lot. Like even setting up a new life here and moving to a completely new country, um, with and kind of building, like I do feel like I call Uganda my home. Like it's been my home for the last 2 years. And I like if I'd gotten a job here, I would have stayed. I was very happy to stay um, for longer. But yeah, that's like it's a mix of the professional and personal interacted a lot. And I think that I definitely feel like I've grown so much as a person and as an economist. And yeah, very fulfilled.
Thanks, Sakshi. Jennifer, Georgina? Well, personally, Georgina, we know you found somebody through your time in Timor-Leste, but anything else you'd want to add?
I think another so two other things. So that because I agree with everything that has just been said. Like I was nodding my head all along about the feeling completely satisfied and at home where you are. I think two other things I would add to that is I think the fact that you can really just take advantage of not having a really lofty title as well. So, I mean, you're still relatively junior. You're not representing any sort of. I mean, you have to have good conduct as an ODI fellow, but you're not wearing the kind of badges like country economist for the World Bank or country representative for one of the multilaterals or anything like that. So it just means that you can really throw yourself into it. So for example, like I also used to teach salsa and bachata lessons like after work, and some other fellows used to teach boxing and all that sort of thing. And I just feel like if we had had like a lofty title of country economist or country rep or etc., we wouldn't be assimilating into the fabric of the community and the place that we were to the same extent. So that's what's really amazing about that you can have this experience. You don't have to live in a compound with only expats. You can live with local people. You can have chickens. I had like banana trees, guava trees, all sorts of trees, and all my little neighbors used to come and collect mangoes, and we'd have like an amazing time and play music and whatnot. So I think that's just throw yourself into that and take advantage of not having kind of a lofty title, that you can kind of become part of the fabric. And another one about your fellowship, even though this sounds it's really obvious to say, but it does open doors. And even here, because everybody knows that the bar is extremely high to become an ODI fellowship, what it says is not only that you're academically excellent, but the thing that Sasha was saying about you're very human, which those two don't often interact. It's unfortunate to say, but I also think that ODI fellows also seek out each other. Once you're an alumni, you kind of know that person's mindset, and that will have the right attitudes to working in a developing country. So, for example, when I came to Palau here, they were exclusively targeting ODI fellows because of people that, you know, can deal with like a little bit of, you know, rough living, kind of roll their sleeves up, get involved, and were just, you know, economists that had kind of, you know, a personality and could assimilate. So I think, yeah, opening doors and excellent reputation, but also having that mindset is really something that is something that you can take with you after your fellowship as well.
Thanks, Georgina.
I agree with so much of what's being said. I'm definitely personally a couple of things. I guess I'm not a naturally patient person, but I definitely learned a lot of patience through the fellowship, and also just being aware of the context and the understanding sort of from the local perspective. Their look at different projects and also what they're dealing with, with the various stakeholders that come in and want to help, but might propose ideas that are hard to implement in practice. And I sort of carry that with me later, because I actually did continue to work in Liberia with this World Bank research project. I work with other agencies in the government and ministries, and then also did my research for my doctor's degree there. And professionally, of course, ODI I am still carrying it with me because my supervisors are ex-ODI fellows. A lot of the jobs I got afterwards are linked to people who are ex-ODI fellows. So it's a hugely valuable network of people. And yeah, like I said, there's an understanding of not just that you can have the technical expertise, but you're a certain sort of person, an individual who can handle a lot of difficult situations, and hopefully are very open-minded in doing.
Well, thank you all. The last question that I will take is on the environment that we are all find ourselves in. If you are a professional or an aspiring professional in global development, it is a very turbulent and unsettling time. ODI Global as an institute has obviously been affected by the cuts, well, the dismantling of USAID, I should say. The fellowship scheme does not get any funding from the US government, so it's protected from that. The FCDO is our large funder to the program, our longstanding champion of the scheme. We are currently working very closely with the FCDO team to determine how best to continue support for the scheme over the long term, over the next 5-6 years. So this would be inclusive of the 2027 envisaged cut to ODA. So there will be a scheme that we will select fellows this year. So there are no plans to halt at this time. So please apply if you think this is the right program for you. The fellowship team is here to answer any questions. If you want to review some of the basics about the scheme, there is the webinar online on our website, and we will host another one of these Q&A town halls in just a few weeks on the 19th. So thank you, Jennifer, Georgina, Sakshi, and Vineet, who had to go catch a flight, for your insights and for being so transparent about how this program has affected you. Thank you so much.